What are the days of Noah? What is the coming of the Lord? What is the day and hour that nobody knows? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Stick around. I think you're going to be inspired. I'm about ready to start my videos on the seals of Revelation chapter 6 and the seventh seal of Revelation chapter 8. But before I actually get into the whole study on the seals, I want to talk about Matthew 24, because Matthew 24 actually has all 6 seals. Doesn't have the seventh, but it has the 6 seals that we read about in Revelation chapter 6. And I've done several videos on Matthew 24. In fact, I have a whole playlist that's just Matthew 24. But what I want to do today is I want to tie in the days of Noah, the day that no man knows the day or the hour, and the coming of the Lord. What is that? Okay, so I'm going to be suggesting some playlists that you can watch if you want to learn some more details about what I'm talking about today. One of the problems that I have with most Bible teachers out there who teach on end times is that they don't define their terms the way the Bible does. So one of those terms that is seldom defined correctly is the parousia, that is the coming of the Lord. And that's a phrase, the coming of the Lord, that we see over and over and over again in the New Testament with regard to the end times. Now, in Matthew 24, the disciples were asking Jesus 3 questions. The first question we're not going to look at. That was with regard to when was the temple going to be destroyed. Not going to talk about that one. I'm going to talk about the second 2 questions that the disciples had in Matthew 24, verse 3. As he sat down on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be?" That's with regard to the not one stone being left on top of another. But the second question is this: what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Okay, the sign of your coming and the end of the age. 2 simple questions. The sign of Jesus coming, he answered so plainly and so clearly that I can't believe that we miss it. But we sort of forget the question as we keep reading through Matthew 24. But if you go down to Matthew 24, verses 29 to 31, you're going to see exactly what is the sign of his coming. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And reading on, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of heaven to another. What I want you to see here is something that's just as plain as the nose on your face. The sign of his coming is in verse 30. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Okay, so the disciples wanted to know what was the sign of Jesus coming. So the sign of his coming is telling us that when you see this certain thing, you will know that Jesus is about to set up his millennial kingdom. Okay, his coming is his parousia. The Greek word means the coming of an important person, a king, a potentate, to rule and reign. When Jesus comes and you see this sign, you will know that we have reached the end of the age. Okay, the end of the age. Okay, it doesn't say the end of the church age. It doesn't say the end of any certain kind of age. The end of this present age will be over when Jesus begins his millennial reign. That is the age to come, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. So what is the sign of Jesus' arrival to begin to rule and reign during what we know of as the millennium? Well, it's the sun going dark, the moon turning to blood. It's going to be after the tribulation of those days, and all the tribes of earth will mourn. And these are the same things that we read about with the sixth seal. When he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood. The stars of the sky fell to the earth as a fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale, and the sky vanished like a scroll that's being rolled up. Go down to verse 16. It talks about people calling for the mountains and the rocks to fall on them. Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? So here you have Jesus, the Lamb, and his Father appearing in heaven, which is just what Jesus said in Matthew 24, that the sign would be that the heavens are opened and you see him. And then it says in Revelation 6 that the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? The great day is the day of the Lord. The great day is 1,000-year day. The great day is when the Lord is going to come and rule and reign on earth. That's the great day. Here's what it looks like on a timeline. We'll have seals 1 through 5. And then the sixth seal, and this is the sign of the Son of Man. Okay, the sixth seal is what we read about in Matthew 24. This is the sign. And this is what tells us that the great day has come. Okay, so we know that the great day, which is the same thing as the day of the Lord, which is the same thing as the 1,000-year millennium, has begun. Okay? From here on out is the millennium. It's the great day. Now, the thing about the great day is that it starts out with wrath. And notice, seals 1 through 5 have happened before the great day begins. The great day is the coming of the Lord. It's really important that we understand where the great day, the day of the Lord, the coming, the parousia of the Lord happens. It happens after the sixth seal. Okay, when the sun goes dark, the moon turns to blood, the sky is rolled back like a scroll, and people see Christ in heaven. They see the Lamb, and they see God seated on his throne, and they know that the millennium has started, but it's going to start with the wrath of God. Okay, and all the seals are in order, by the way. They're in sequential order. It's how Matthew 24 talks about them. So if we go down in Matthew 24 and we go to the verse 36, the very popular, ever popular verse 36, but concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Okay, so we're talking about the coming of the Son of Man, which happens right over here. Okay? Now, we're also talking about a day and an hour that nobody knows. What day does nobody know when that's going to happen? Well, the subject here, the question that the disciples had was what was going to be the sign of Jesus coming, his appearance as the king, the great day, the millennial reign. They were waiting for the millennium. They weren't waiting up for a rapture. They wanted to sit on 12 thrones and judge the 12 tribes of Israel. They wanted to be with Christ in his glory. Okay, this is what they were watching for. They didn't know anything about a rapture or anything like that, although Jesus is going to hint about rapture here in Matthew 24, and I've talked about that in previous videos. But what is the day and hour that nobody knows? Well, it's this one right here. It's when the day of the Lord is going to begin. That's what we're talking about. When is Jesus going to come? What's the sign of his appearance as the king? It's the sixth seal, the events associated with that. That's how we know when this age is over, this present age is over, and the day of the Lord, the coming age, the age of Christ's rule and reign, that has arrived. But it arrives with wrath. Remember that. It arrives with wrath. So the day and hour has nothing to do with our rapture. It doesn't have anything really to do with the tribulation, because it's after the tribulation of those days that the sun goes dark and the moon turns to blood. Okay, so it's not talking about tribulation either. Okay, so the day of the Lord is the day that we don't know the day or the hour. So the coming of the Lord has to do with Jesus' rule and reign as the Messiah during the day of the Lord. Okay, the day of the Lord is the coming of the Lord. That was what the disciples wanted to know. They weren't asking about when is the rapture and so on. And by the way, the gathering together after Jesus returns, that has to do with our ruling and reigning with Christ. And this was the question that the people of Thessalonica had in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where Paul says, now concerning the coming of the Lord and our being gathered together to him. Okay, I don't want you to be upset to the effect that the day of the Lord has come, because it hasn't. The day of the Lord will not come until the falling away and the revelation of the man of sin. Okay, so that's got to happen over on this side. Okay, so the gathering together, again, is not the rapture. It's when we begin to rule and reign with Christ. So secondly, the day and the hour that nobody knows has to do with the coming of the Lord. Nobody knows when that's going to be, but the sign is at the sixth seal, when the sun goes dark and the moon turns to blood. Now, in that same passage of Matthew 24:36, where it says, concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Okay, so we're talking about the days of Noah now. What does that mean? What are the days of Noah? What is their connection with the day of the Lord and the sixth seal events and the reign of Christ? When we're talking about the days of Noah, we should automatically think we need to go back to Genesis 6. Genesis 6 now came about when mankind began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of mankind, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves whomever they chose. Verse 4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of mankind, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Verse 5 of Genesis 6, then the Lord saw that the wickedness of mankind was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of their heart was only evil continually. But it says Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And in verse 9, these are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God. The earth was filled with violence, and God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. For humanity had corrupted its way upon the earth. So there are several aspects to the days of Noah. One is an incursion of the sons of God mating with human women, okay? So we're talking about an incursion of not the fallen angels who live in heaven, who are with Satan right now, who will be cast out later. We're talking about the angels that were kept in the pit, okay? The incursion of the sons of God. Okay, that's the watcher angels. Okay, and the second thing was all the violence in the land. Okay, so there was so much violence that God was sorry he made mankind. And as a result, he was going to send the flood to destroy mankind. But he saved Noah. Now, there's other places that talk about how if God didn't shorten the days, that there would be no flesh that would be saved. We're talking about like human people who have uncorrupted DNA, people like Noah, that if God didn't intervene, there wouldn't be any people left. So when we're talking about the days of Noah, we're not talking about like ordinary days like now. We're talking about an incursion of the sons of God, the fallen angels. So will that happen during the end times? Yes, it will. That's at the fifth trumpet. That's when the pit's going to open. And that's when these fallen sons of God who've been kept in chains in the pit since the time of the flood, that's when they're going to be released. That's part of the days of Noah. It's another incursion of fallen angels on the earth. The second thing is there's violence, an increase in violence. And remember, the second seal is about peace being removed from the earth. And we're also talking about the salvation of a righteous person here. Okay, so that's the third thing. And that is actually going to happen right here. There's going to be a rapture. That's when he who endures to the end of the age, okay, just before the new age begins, he who endures to the end will be saved. We're talking about believers here. Let's go back to Matthew 24, verse 38. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. The coming of the Son of Man has to do with his return to begin his millennial reign. Who was eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage? Who was doing that? It was these guys here, the wives that had been given to them, and their sons, the Nephilim, the giants. These guys were the ones that were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage. They were the ones that were doing it until the day when Noah entered the ark. So who are the people, the Christians, who are going to be raptured just before this day right here? Well, this is the rapture that's talked about in Revelation chapter 14, verse 14. One like a son of man comes on the clouds to harvest the earth. Now, this is the third and final rapture. And it doesn't happen when Jesus steps down on the earth. It happens before the sign of the Son of Man. Okay, before the wrath of God begins. Okay, the wrath of God is going to begin right here, and in Revelation, it's the bowls. The seals has a timeline, the trumpets have a timeline, and the bowls have a timeline. Okay, there's this all over here at the end. But every one of those seals and trumpets, they have their own individual timeline. And we don't have all the seals and then all the trumpets and then all the bowls. That's not how this works. It's sort of like everyone is its own little list, and you find where on the timeline it should go. And the sixth seal will happen actually sometime after the fifth trumpet. Fifth trumpet is when the pit is opened. All right, so then let's go down to verse 39 of Matthew 24. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Okay, they were unaware. Okay, and these guys are not going to be watching. They're going to be unaware as well of when the Lord is coming. They are not expecting him to return. They aren't expecting it at all. And then two men will be in the field. One will be taken, one will be left. Two women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and one will be left. So what this is telling me is that it's going to be a little different than the days of Noah, because during the days of Noah, everybody but 8 people were destroyed. And here it's like 50% are saved and 50% are going to be taken away in the flood. Verse 42, therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is going to come. But know this, if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Okay, so the master of the house here actually is Satan and the beast. If they knew when the Son of Man was coming like a thief to steal away his people, they'd have stayed awake. But they're not expecting Christ to return. There is something about the end times that's not allowing them to see clearly. Okay, so they think they're actually going to continue on, that they own the earth now, that they own it, that they control it, they're not watching. And it says here that the master of the house, that is Satan and the beast, are not going to be watching either. If they had known when Jesus was coming back, that he actually was coming back, they'd have stayed awake. Verse 44, therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Okay, so when the day of the Lord comes at an hour we do not expect, there's this third rapture that's going to come when we don't expect. This is the one that's imminent. This is the one that we don't know when it is, but we know the window of it. We know the window. It's going to have to be after the seals 1 through 5, and we know that we're going to be in heaven. The first rapture would have already taken place. Kings and priests. That's the child of Revelation 12 who's going to rule and reign. Okay, so there's already been a group taken. The seals then are opened, seals 1 through 5. And according to Matthew 24 and 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, you have to have the abomination of desolation. Okay? And it's after the tribulation of those days that it's cut short. The beast, however, is going to have 42 months. He'll get the whole thing. The wrath of God with Armageddon and all of that will end right here. And this is when Jesus returns actually to the earth. He's not just appearing in the heavens. He's actually coming to the earth. And that's when he'll throw the beast and the false prophet into the lake of fire. What we know about the days of Noah is that it's about an incursion of fallen angels and the violence that ensues once they're on the earth. Okay, we know that they're going to be here. We're told that they are in chains until the great day. The great day is this day right here. It's on the day of the Lord, at the beginning of the day of the Lord, that God is going to take all those fallen angels, the sons of God, the watchers, plus all the fallen angels that are going to arrive from heaven after being cast out by Michael, plus all the demons, plus anybody who has taken the mark of the beast, which isn't going to be everybody, but those that do, and anyone who worships the beast and the image of the beast. All of those are going to be thrown into the lake of fire. But this is not a judgment on anyone except for those entities. It's primarily for fallen spiritual enemies, the fallen angels. Okay, that's what this tribulation time is primarily about. It's not really about Israel, because Israel won't enter into a saving knowledge of Christ until they see the sign of the Son of Man. And by that time, we're going to have the wrath of God. We've got the remnant in the wilderness, and they'll probably see that sign as well. And then they'll come back, and that's when they will repopulate the earth during the millennium. Plus, any of those people who were left after one was taken and one was left, there'll be somebody of those who are left. Those who are taken in judgment. The people who are left are going to populate the earth during the millennium. They're going to be mortal people who are left. So the people who are going to be raptured right here, they're the ones that have to be ready. And then Jesus goes and tells a parable about an unfaithful steward, unfaithful servant. We're not going to get into that right now. So Satan has kept this end time incursion of the watchers kind of a secret, and he's sort of, doing the Jedi mind trick thing where we can't make the connection between the days of Noah, the Genesis 6 fallen angels, the pit being opened and these fallen angels being released, and the days of Noah that are going to happen prior to the coming of the Lord. Jesus is not going to have fallen angels and demons and those entities during the time when he rules. That's what this whole time is really about. It's getting rid of this fallen aspect of the spiritual entities. So Peter talks about this too. He talks about how people aren't going to make the connections between the time of the flood and the days of Noah and what's going to happen during the end times. This is 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. This is now the second letter that I'm writing to you, beloved. In both of them, I'm stirring up your sincere mind by way of reminder that you should remember the predictions of the holy prophets and the commandment of the Lord and Savior through your apostles, knowing first of all that scoffers will come in the last days with scoffing, following their own sinful desires. Okay, we certainly see that happening in the world today. And they will say, where's the promise of his coming? Okay, they're not asking about when is the rapture. They're saying, well, when is he going to come to rule and reign? When is he coming to set up his kingdom? For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all things are continuing as they were from the beginning of creation. All right, so this is where these people are like, duh, they don't get it. What they're saying is that God created the earth and then nothing changed. Everything's been going the way it has ever since the beginning. And Peter says, did you forget about the flood? Did you forget about the incursion of fallen angels and their children, the Nephilim, who came about as a result of the intermarriage between the daughters of men and these sons of God? Did you forget about that? And what God had to do, he had to wipe them all out, and he just saved Noah? Did you guys forget about that? Here's what he says. Verse 5, for they deliberately overlook this fact that the heavens existed long ago. They've been around for a long time. And the earth was formed out of water and through water by the word of God. Okay, remember the Spirit hovered over the waters that were on the earth? And that by means of these, the world that then existed was deluged with water and perished. All right, so there was a world back here that there was a flood. So what Peter is saying is that there was a time when things were judged, when God judged this right here. The final judgment of these entities hasn't happened yet. They're being kept in chains, awaiting the great day over here, when they will be judged permanently and cast into the lake of fire. So we know that all things are not going to continue the same forever. And the time for the final judgment of the corrupt sons of God will take place during the end times. Okay, just prior to the millennial reign of Christ at his coming. Okay, so here's some things I want you to remember. The days of Noah are about the incursion, another incursion. Once the pit is opened, that these fallen angels are going to be released on the earth. And it's the king of these fallen angels who are in the pit who is going to indwell the seventh king, who dies and comes back as the eighth king, the Antichrist. Then he's going to rule on the earth, and he's going to rule with fallen entities, fallen angels. And that's what's going to happen prior to the coming of the Lord. The second thing I want you to remember is that the coming of the Lord is always referring to Jesus' second coming. His second coming. It's never referring to the rapture. It's never referring to the rapture. And which rapture are you talking about? There's the first one for kings and priests that we hope to go in. That's the one I'm hoping to be a part of. And then there's people who are going to be coming to Christ, in particular, the 144,000. And they're going to go before the hour of trial, which is right here, the abomination of desolation. And then anybody who's alive and survives until the coming of the Lord, when he returns, then they're going to be taken in that third rapture. And the third thing is the day and hour that nobody knows what it is. It's right here. It's the day when the millennium begins. Nobody knows that. That's when this age, this present age we're living in now, will end and the new age will begin. And anyone who endures to the end of the age, this sixth seal stuff, is going to be delivered. That is, they're going to be taken. Right? Okay, so that's all I have to say here. I hope you'll leave a comment in the comment section, and we'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.